Okay, we're going to get started. So welcome to the 2023 Goalmakers Conference. This is our 14th annual, so I'm thrilled to be here. This is actually my 10th, so I'm really excited to be here with you all. Thank you. I'm Kristen, Dailey, the Executive Director of Global Washington. For those of you that don't know, Global Washington is a membership network of for-profits, nonprofits, academic institutions and foundations that have a presence in Washington State and do work to improve lives in low and middle income countries. The other exciting announcement that I wanted to say for this year is Global Washington just formed a merger with Pangea Giving, which we're thrilled about. There's several Pangea Giving members here. Pangea Giving is a giving circle where Pangea members pool their funds and give small grants to grassroots organizations that are headquartered outside the United States. So please find a Pangea member and learn more. They have a session actually this afternoon to talk about their model and trust-based philanthropy. But it's been an exciting year for Global Washington with this merger, so we are thrilled. So before we get started too, I want to thank our sponsors that we have today for the conference. We have Amazon, Microsoft, the Gates Foundation, the King Bowden Trust, Give to Asia, Myriad, Landesa, Opportunity International, Landesa, World Vision, and Umpqua Bank. So thank you all for your support. So also I wanted to make sure everyone knows by now about our Whova conference platform. So if you don't know yet, please go to the Apple Store or the Google Play Store and download Whova. Looks like that. Because this is where you're going to find the agenda for today, but more importantly, it's where you can connect with others. You can actually do an in-app message to somebody and another attendee or a speaker and ask to have a meeting later or just connect on a topic. You can also put in questions for the speakers into their session. There's actually a leaderboard if you feel competitive, except Dash, if he's in the room, you're not going to beat Dash. He's just well beyond. He loves the app and puts lots of things in it. But please look at that. There's also some polls in there. And actually, I want to show you kind of a result of one of the polls. We asked, what are you most looking forward to coming to the conference today? Obviously, networking, and every year, year to year, networking is one of the top choices here. But I also love some of the other options here, the building trust, because that is really what Global Washington is about. We still truly believe in this day and age that in-person connections matter, that you can do a lot of work virtually and in a remote workplace, and if you work globally, you have to. However, the face-to-face meetings builds that trust. It actually has been proven there's neurological changes in the brain when you meet someone so that you can build that trust so that the work happens afterwards. So we love this coming together in person. Thank you very much for being here. And I know not everyone can be here in person, and so that's why we also do a day of the conference that's fully virtual. That happened last week, and I know some of you have already come up and told me how great it was. In the Whova app, you can watch the recordings from all the sessions if you missed any. So you can go and click on the agenda and find the session, and that'll take you to the recording of that. Again, the virtual conference was a way to engage speakers outside the United States as well, and really lift their voices. So it was a great way to do that as well. So this year's theme is about advancing transformative philanthropy. And this theme has come about over the past 2 years in talking to Global Washington members. And the idea of localization, or the idea of taking a US-based NGO or organization or company and moving decision-making to where the work is in closer proximity. And that's happening. I'm talking to many nonprofits that are downsizing their offices in the United States and really building up offices outside in low and middle income countries. However, we all know that this process isn't going to work without resources also flowing in country. So this conference today is to talk about that. It's to talk about the flow of funding, both from philanthropy, from individuals or corporations or foundations, to again, to support the work in close proximity to where global development actually happens. But it's also about looking at large INGOs and how they work with local partners and how they either subgrant or move their resources to support grassroots organizations. We also know that this is a fairly new topic and people are still in process of figuring this out. So we wanted to recognize today that this might not be best practices for everyone to take away, but we want to have some peer learning. We want to have some great examples for you all to point to and understand that we're all in this together. Global Washington is also really committed to the process of co-creation. So we do believe that co-creation in this process of transformative philanthropy could be really great. Co-creation actually creates more equity and bringing diversity of voices and people to the table to figure out how resources are going to be spent. Right? So again, throughout the day, we want to use the spirit of co-creation as we think about how philanthropy can be better. Better for everyone, more sustainable, and again, to increase that impact that we're all looking for. So today, we're really going to dive into this. I hope you're all here with an open mind. Our overall objective of the conference every year is to create a space for these conversations. Most of you in the room are what we call practitioners. You work for an NGO or work for a foundation that does this work already. We know this work is hard. We know this work can be taxing. So we try to create this space for you to lean on your peers or just to come together to celebrate what you're doing. And, you know, it's a kind of drizzly, oh, look, the sun might come out. Maybe, that little patch of blue there. But it is December, but we always think that this is kind of a bright light in the middle of our winter to come together and really recharge. So we hope you come away feeling recharged, feeling refreshed as you go about your work that you do. So with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. Rob Rosen is the Director of Philanthropic Partnerships at the Gates Foundation, and he'll be joined on stage by Akhtar Badshah, who is at the University of Washington and also a Global Washington board member. I'm not going to go into their bios because it's in Whova. So again, if you don't have the app, another reason, go in and do read their bios because it really gives some good context. But you can go into the agenda and find their bios there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our speakers.
Sorry. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hey, we got the sun, you know.
I'm facing the wrong way now.
I know. There were a lot of people who are actually on that edge because they all want to look out. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. First of all, thank you all very much for being here. And, you know, as a board member of Global Washington, this is always such a fabulous event. I look forward to it every year. It's something that I want to be part of, and I get to meet old friends, make new friends. But today, we are here to have a conversation with Rob Rosen. And I want to start off by, in 3 days, you're going to spend, it'll be 16 years at the Gates Foundation.
Yeah,
right?
Hard to believe.
Yeah. And in that 16 years, you achieved a lot. The foundation has achieved a lot. Tell us a little bit of your journey. How did you get to the foundation, and what have you seen in terms of these major changes that have happened?
Absolutely. Well, thank you and good morning. And I do see rays of sunshine, which is, I think, a good metaphor for the world that we're in today of some clouds and some sun coming together. So to get to the foundation, you just go up the hill to 550.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it has been an incredible journey. My background, I'm a lawyer by training and had worked in government and politics for many years in the Clinton White House and for Senator Ted Kennedy, and did some consulting and got a call to have a breakfast one morning that led to a conversation that led to somehow us plucking our 2-year-old and my wife and dog out to Seattle in 2008. We started in DC for a bit, but landed here in February 14th, 2008. Spent Valentine's Day on a flight coming out, but it's been a remarkable journey. At that time that I came in, it was recently after Warren Buffett's decision to partner with Bill and Melinda, which I think is one of the watershed moments in philanthropy. It's important and very easy to focus on the dollars that continue to come into the foundation. I think there are two really important lessons beyond that. One is the trust that Warren showed in saying, hey, I don't need to build something in parallel. I see something good that's working. I'm going to treat philanthropy how I think about my deployment of capital overall, and together we can do more. And then importantly, in addition to that monumental decision in terms of the flow of his funds, they continued to have the conversation around what more might be done in terms of philanthropy. There was a recognition that we were on this cusp of an extraordinary generational wealth transfer. And we'd seen some amazing examples historically going back to the Carnegies and others at the turn of the last century. Ted Turner, more recently, and also Chuck Feeney. If you haven't read about Chuck, he passed just about 6-8 weeks ago. There's a wonderful obituary in the New York Times. But here was somebody who quietly had amassed extraordinary amounts of money through duty-free shopping stores, but gave it all away and literally had this aim of dying with nothing and achieved it. He had a little bit to live on, but really not much. And importantly, his giving was extraordinary. Yes, he supported institutions like Cornell, but I like Cornell. But beyond that, you can look at my bio. Joke makes a lot more sense. But beyond that, really looked at transformational giving in global health. And so, anyway, the story of it is that what could we do to see more people move in the direction of Chuck Feeney and others? And so started what evolved over time, over my first few years, into our philanthropic partnership work. And in addition to the things that the Gates Foundation does in global health, like trying to eradicate malaria or in gender equality or global development or education in the US, we have a substantial program focused on philanthropy with the goal of driving for more giving and more of that giving going into the areas of greatest need. Gender, race, the SDGs, more gifts at scale to societal problems. And so just very loosely, we do three things. One is we are substantial funders of the infrastructure for philanthropy. Infrastructure is not the most exciting thing to talk about unless you get in an audience as smart as this, because you know how crucial it is to have the data about what's happening and why, to have the infrastructure around support for learning and development for staff, to have the right policy ingredients in place and the right insights about the sector. And then on top of that, we have different programs focused on givers. We do have a program focused on everyday donors. I'm super proud of our partnership from day one with Giving Tuesday. They just had we had Giving Tuesday about a week ago, and the growth has been extraordinary in terms of how they're inspiring and supporting donors to make great choices. We do a lot in terms of convening around the sector and Akhtar's been a great part of that, to drive ideas like how do you find ways to create greater visibility for wonderful organizations that might be fiscally sponsored and are invisible on other platforms. So there's so many opportunities there. And then we work with ultra-high net worth individuals, most visibly through the Giving Pledge, which has been around for about 13 years now, which is a commitment by those with extraordinary means to give away at least, but most limiting, for about 80% of their wealth in their life and through their estate. And our team works a great deal on figuring out how do we find the right buttons to push in terms of inspiring and supporting those donors to take action and have the impact that they want to have.
This is fantastic. And you raised Giving Tuesday, and they just crossed 3.2 billion on Tuesday, on Giving Tuesday. So we are seeing this enormous growth, and obviously some of that is being driven by technology platforms and others that is actually increasing that area of giving. But we've also seen a decline in everyday givers. How are you computing the two? What's going on?
It's challenging. I mean, because we also saw a wonderful uptick in 20 and 2021.
Right.
That sense of urgency around the medical crisis in terms of COVID, but also all of the ancillary negative effects in our community. People did respond. Look, I think there are a couple trends that are impacting the decline. The dollars are steady state, but the actual rate of participation is down. Economic anxiety can't be underestimated, both about what exists today, but also what the future might bring. There's definitely a deep felt concern about that I think policymakers and others are still trying to understand. Tax codes can have some role in that. There were significant changes in 2017 that changed how you might get credit for itemized deductions. There's a huge opportunity in 2025 to shift that, which has not been on the radar screen, so put that one on your radar screen of things that can be done. And then we are seeing some substitute with things like person-to-person giving. But when you look at technology and you look at the question of proximity, I think there's been a huge recognition of the role and the importance of getting proximate to the issues, to have implementers who are close on the ground and really being informed by the communities, not who they serve, but who they're working with. That gets tricky in a global context because I can look down the street, and this is where I think technology can play a really important role, but I don't think we've seen it come to fruition yet. And so when you look at things like AI, or even just the ability to have, how we underutilize things like Zoom and Teams going back, pre-March of 2020, it was sort of an afterthought. And so I'm still excited about ways in which the sector can create proximity, even if it's a bit more virtual. And the other thing I would look at is, what role do intermediaries play in terms of being a conduit for those donors who might be sitting here and see opportunities in parts of the world where they know their dollars are going to have the greatest possible impact. There's giving in the U.S. for American donors is wonderful, but there are so many underserved opportunities globally, and it's hard to. I don't follow the effective altruism school of thought, but in looking at where you're going to have an incredible return in terms of human lives saved or improved, the opportunities globally are just mind-blowing.
We didn't discuss this earlier on when we had this, but this morning we had this conversation with Mary Meeker, who's a refugee and came here and got educated. And something that just kind of, in what you were talking about, suddenly shifted in my way is, should we be actually changing our conversation and moving away from the word giving, right? In terms of inclusivity, at times I think that you only give when you've taken, whereas in today's world, people actually want to get engaged and involved, and how do we kind of think about that shift? And are you all at the foundation thinking about it?
I think it's a conversation. I don't, frankly, know exactly where it's going, but I definitely have strong thoughts in terms of what you're saying, which is engagement to me was the key word, right? And when we think about, if you step back and look at some of the challenges more broadly that we're facing in society in the U.S. of polarization and talking past each other, talking more than listening, that applies here too, which is how do you get engaged? And that may be your dollars, that may be your time, that may be your voice.
Yeah.
And having that two-way mindset, whether you're a donor, whether you're an implementer, whether you're somehow in the ecosystem connecting in other ways, I wish we could shift that from, I'm giving, I'm a donor, to I want to see this outcome. And I want to make a difference, and here's what I can bring to the table. And we see this from philanthropists. I know there's some mixed views that have certainly come up in the press in terms of the role of the wealthiest in terms of their philanthropy. But when we see a vision, and that vision can be and should be created, with all stakeholders. When we see a vision, when we see the resources, which are absolutely crucial, we can't get things done without those, and we see the voice coalescing around where we are and where we'd collectively like to go, that change can be extraordinary.
So we talk about, you kind of mentioned proximate philanthropy. There's a huge move. You guys are doing some amazing work in that space. And you also just mentioned this role wealthy billionaires play in changing society. Where do you see that connection between people's voice of what needs to get done versus a wealthy individual saying, this is what I want to address? And how do you kind of straddle that?
I mean, I think it's a journey, and it's something we work on, but there's so many that need to work on that collectively in terms of, first when you think about the journey for the donor, and I know it's not always the group that generates the most empathy, but recognizing the extraordinary opportunity in terms of using the resources for something that's going to make a meaningful difference is quite intimidating. Which area should I go into? How should I go do it? And by the way, I'm probably incredibly engaged in doing whatever the thing is that generated it. And yet, I think for many, recognizing I do want to start sooner rather than later, but I want to succeed in this in terms of really having that potential turn into reality. So there is a journey of, and again, I think that listening mindset is something that we strongly encourage, of how do you get the right stakeholders at the table? How do you formulate a cohesive strategy around this? And then importantly, the piece that I don't want to lose in this is we do need to take some risks, right? Yes. If philanthropy is not, Warren Buffett uses this example, it's a baseball analogy, so bear with me, but if you're just hitting singles and doubles and not swinging for the fences, not taking long shots, as a philanthropist, then you're missing an opportunity. Now, you may want to balance out your portfolio because you also want to see some things that are working, because even donors need that cycle of motivation. But philanthropy should take big, bold risks. Like the Gates Foundation, one thing, I saw a former colleague who I worked on with us years ago, the notion of eradicating polio. We thought it was going to be done years ago. It's not. We've been this close. We're still this close. But there is, it's going to happen. It really is. And, somebody might be critical and saying, hey, it's taking more money, it's taking more time. But you've got to set these bold, audacious goals. And when you fail or when you have disappointments, learn from them. Were you not listening to the right stakeholders? Was the strategy off? Was it just external factors, like COVID, that have interrupted so many things? We really need to create an environment where people can work together to push, because, again, back to I see the clouds coming. There's clouds and sunshine out there, but as much as we see, incredibly intimidating challenges out there, we also have so many solutions. And when we get the right financing, the right strategy, the right voice, and the right alignment of stakeholders, extraordinary change is possible.
Talking about the weather, there is always the sun. So just look through the clouds.
Absolutely.
You talked about polio eradication, huge effort, right? Success. Millions of lives have been impacted and saved. Give me two more major things that you've seen achieved through the Gates Foundation.
Yeah. I think it's also important to talk about things we haven't achieved, but I'll come back to those.
Talk about first what we've achieved.
We don't
then
talk
we'll
about
see
this.
where we need to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think the shift, all of these are works in progress, and that's the important point to remember. I think polio is wonderful because at some point we'll say it's done. Most other things are not as binary of problem solved, but the evolution in the focus on gender equality and the role that plays, and thinking through, particularly globally, but women in leadership and women's economic empowerment has been absolutely an extraordinary shift, and that continues. I'd say past that, certainly what we've seen in global health, I mean, look what happened in COVID, as bad as it was. What we've seen demonstrated in terms of innovations in vaccines and other technologies is extraordinary. There's still some big, tough ones out there, malaria, tuberculosis, and it's a nonlinear journey, but I think as we look forward, we'll see extraordinary progress on those as well.
We're going to come to the end of our time, but I have one last question for you. What are the three challenges you will give this group to focus on?
Yeah, I go back to the word cloud that you saw. I hope inspiration pops up from, and networking is critically important, but I hope inspiration pops up because you all do have a role. This is extraordinarily tough work, whichever part of it you play. It is incredibly gratifying when it works well, but there are moments that really require digging deep to keep pushing. And so I think finding ways to inspire each other, networking turning into solutions, and most importantly on any of these things, I know great ideas are going to come out, finding pathways for follow through and staying with it, maybe narrowing that down to a few things as you connect, whether through speakers or in your individual conversations, of thinking about, great, how do I take that inspiration and turn it into action?
Well, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful way to get all of us going. Thank you.
Pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Rob, Akhtar. It was a great call to action for this group. Again, if you think about individual donors that might be pulling away, it is part of our role to help tell the stories that we all know, to engage people again in the United States. So along with feeling inspired and finding those pathways, tell your stories. So thank you. I also want to challenge all the speakers that will be speaking today to make an analogy between clouds and sunshine. Because I do have a feeling we might be stuck with clouds for a while, a little bit of rain, but as Akhtar said, the sun is always there if you look through.